Hi, everyone. This is Linda Moulton Howe on my Earthfiles YouTube channel, and it's great to be with you all. And I'm going to concentrate tonight on a subject that keeps coming up over and over from different facets. It has throughout 2017, and this is the strange, mysterious continent of Antarctica. In this year, I have had this repeated theme from military whistleblowers that have been either in Antarctica or have worked on Antarctica missions. And they have told me, at least 3 or 4 now, that one of the main bases on Earth for an alien presence that has interacted with this planet for millions of years is Antarctica. And some whistleblowers have even told me that the architecture, construction materials, and hieroglyphs that they have firsthand knowledge about match architecture, construction materials, and hieroglyphs on the backside of the moon and in the northern hemisphere of Mars at the Cydonia region. If this is true, when will those truths be revealed to Earth humans? Recently, on November 5th, 2017, the editor of NexusNewsFeed.com, Duncan Rhodes, a friend, I have known him for 2 or 3 decades, and I have exchanged information between his website and my website. And on his website, just in the last 3 or 4 days, he has posted a March 5th, 1947 El Mercurio newspaper article from Santiago de Chile that appeared after the sudden and mysterious termination of America's Operation High Jump at the end of February 1947. That was only 4 months before the famous June 24th, 1947 Kenneth Arnold sighting of 9 silver flying saucers moving rapidly over the Cascade Mountain Range in Washington state. It was Kenneth Arnold who came up with that phrase, calling them flying saucers, skipping as if they were skipping across water. And then it was only a week after that, in the first week of July 1947, when 3 wedge-shaped UFOs crashed in the Roswell, New Mexico region. Now, along with the El Mercurio newspaper article, the Nexus editor posted 5 black and white photographs received from an anonymous source, all dated in February 1947. 2 of the 5 photographs contain unidentified round aerial craft in the skies above the American ships, and one shows a highly strange dark sphere that looks like it fell into or is rising out of the ocean waters. All of the images are described as allegedly photographed during Operation High Jump in the end of 46 into 47, and that these photographs were specifically on dates in February of 1947. Now, the focus on the 2 that have the UFOs seems clearer at the object in the sky than in the surrounding sea and ships. So it might mean that this is a photoshopped series, or with the 2 that have the UFOs in them. But if they were manipulated, it is possible that Anonymous or someone that he knows wants to convey that there is hidden information about UFOs in Operation High Jump. That mission had been ordered by America's Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, in 1946. And that was the year that Harry S. Truman had thought about and was organizing what became MJ-12 of scientists, military men, and businessmen that Truman wanted to have as 12 advisors that he could count on to keep their mouths shut forever, but that the 12 with the president would be able to talk very frankly and openly and honestly about an alien presence on the Earth that had been detected during World War II. And we all know that the Nazis and Hitler kept kind of referencing that there might be in Pienemonte, that the vril craft and silver discs that people had seen, that they might actually be extraterrestrial. That was a theme that Hitler himself seemed to be promoting during World War II. Well, it was Forrestal who ordered a large Antarctic expedition to be called Operation High Jump, and it was to be under the command of U.S. Navy Admiral Richard E. Byrd, who had already been to Antarctica 3 times before this. The Admiral's huge armada of ships, helicopters, and planes arrived in the Ross Sea on December 31st, 1946, at the southern end of West Antarctica. Now, was the real reason for this large military presence to navigate the rumors from World War II that the German Nazis had a large underground base in New Swabia in the northeastern region of Antarctica? Is that really the reason why there was this large military force under Admiral Byrd? Maybe even an Antarctic underground base inhabited by extraterrestrials that the Hitler and the Nazis hinted about. Well, whatever the truth, Admiral Byrd suddenly terminated Operation High Jump at the end of February 1947, a full 6 months before he was originally planned to leave Antarctica. And the entire armada began its return to the United States under mysterious circumstances in that first week of March 1947. And that's when, on March 5th, El Mercurio reported, quote, Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today of the necessity for the United States to adopt protective measures against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile aircraft proceeding from the polar regions. The Admiral said, quote, this is Byrd, I do not want to scare anybody, but the bitter reality is that in the event of a new war, the United States will be attacked by aircraft flying in from over one or both poles, close quote. Why would he say this? Well, the implication in this anonymous report to Nexus is that the UFO phenomena was seen and photographed by the Operation High Jump that was under the command of Richard Byrd. And El Mercurio continued, on the subject of the recently terminated expedition, Byrd said that, quote, the most important of the observations and discoveries made was the present potential situation as it relates to the security of the United States. It's so puzzling because he and all of this armada and 4,000 men from the United States were supposed to be in Antarctica to do aerial surveys of mountain ranges and things that were geophysical. And yet, what this is implying is he's warning there could be a war, there could be objects coming from the poles, and is saying the most important of their observations relates to a potential situation as it relates to the security of the United States. He says, I can do no more than warn my countrymen very forcibly that the time has passed when we could take refuge in complete isolation and rest in confidence in the guaranteed security that we thought distance the oceans and the poles previously provided, close quote, Admiral Byrd. Meaning, he is basically saying in between these lines that what their experience with Operation High Jump in Antarctica gave him pause, and he is basically in between the lines of this release to El Mercurio saying there is something here that can threaten the national security of the United States. Now, the Admiral warned of the necessity to remain in a state of alert and watchfulness. He said that he, quote, realized, perhaps better than any other person, the significance of the scientific discoveries made in these explorations because I can make comparisons between now and when I was in Antarctica before the war, 3 times. We are abandoning the region after making important geographical discoveries, close quote. Did those geographical discoveries include confirmation of an alien underground base from which the round area vehicles are shown in the recent 5 photographs provided by the anonymous source, whether or not those discs were photoshopped in or not? Now, if we jump from February 1947 to 1985, 38 years later, an American C-130 with a dozen crew members were flying from the U.S. McMurdo base at the southernmost point of West Antarctica near the Ross Sea. They had received a medical emergency alert from Australia's Davis Station on the far eastern coast of Antarctica with a request to get to Davis Station as fast as possible to pick up the patient. To save time, the C-130 captain decided to shorten their flying time by cutting across a no-fly zone near the South Pole that was on their aviation maps. And that's when they all saw a huge circular hole in the ice about the size of a football field, which is 300 feet in diameter. Now, at this point, it's important to realize, because they had a medical emergency, because they felt that if they flew through this strange no-fly zone that they never had before, it would cut off time getting to Davis. And that's why they make this decision to fly through the no-fly zone, not understanding why it should even be on the map. And here is this huge hole that seems to be constructed and seems to have some sort of an entrance that has a slanted entrance ramp going into it. Now, when they finally got back to McMurdo, the whole crew was visited by some intelligence type person who warned them, what you saw near the pole, you did not see, close quote. And yet, strangely, none of that C-130 crew was asked to sign non-disclosure agreements. That same C-130 crew also repeatedly saw silver discs over the transantarctic mountains that divide West and East Antarctica. The silver discs did 90-degree turns. They stopped mid-air, but they always stayed below the C-130. And eventually, the crew would have an even weirder experience with a National Science Foundation research group. A naval flight engineer on that C-130 crew told me that when he and others heard rumors that there was an underground extraterrestrial controlled base, that the scientists went to, and that the big no-fly zone hole in the ice near the South Pole might be an entrance to that alien underground. All of this and more I will be talking about with the now retired Navy flight engineer himself tomorrow on my live 2-hour broadcast for Phenomena Radio on the digital broadcasting KGRA. We begin live for 2 hours at 6 p.m. Pacific and Mountain Time, which is 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. Eastern. And I hope that all of you here now can tune in tomorrow night for that broadcast, because Antarctica is increasingly described by whistleblowers as an important link on Earth to alien presences who have been terraforming and harvesting metals and genes from this planet for millions of years, the whistleblowers say. And yet we, the human life form on the surface, are kept in the dark. If anyone in this Earthfiles YouTube channel audience tonight has any first-hand military or other information about an alien presence in Antarctica, past, present, please email me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com. All requests for anonymity are always honored. And again, my email address is earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Just think of a reporter who files news about the Earth. And now I would like to take your questions as we go into this subject or any other subjects, knowing that Antarctica is in an investigative phase because whistleblowers are beginning to talk. But if I don't have answers, that means all of you listening tonight can come back to me with any information that you learn, and we will keep learning about all of this together. And so now we're going to go to your questions. The question is about John Kerry, and we could also add that there have been other people, like a religious person from the Greek or Vatican relationship, and Buzz Aldrin, and there have been others that in the past year or past months of this year have been there. Is it possible that when Buzz Aldrin released, it was his tweet? Nobody can take that away. It was a Buzz Aldrin tweet, no matter who tried to turn it into a joke later. Buzz Aldrin, we heard on the news, was having to be taken out of Antarctica because of a medical emergency. And he tweeted this strange tweet, "I have seen the face of pure evil." And a couple of days later came a tweet where they were trying to turn it into a joke. John Kerry, as a person who had been Secretary of State going down there when he was still operative, is an interesting question. Were some people being allowed to go down and see either archaeological artifacts and remains of whatever it is that is built there, or is it that there is some kind of ongoing communication exchange now, and that the people who have gone there, for some reason, there was some organized meeting in order to communicate with whatever is going on in Antarctica? I don't know, but I think it is really worth all of us remembering that Buzz Aldrin tweeted out, "I have seen the face of pure evil." What was it? Why was it described that way, even if later they tried to cover it up as a joke? If anybody has any insights on that, I would certainly hope that you would email me. John Burroughs and I are going to, in our next November 16th Phenomena Radio, John will be back for that program. He's been wrestling with a lot of medical issues. It's John who got a hold of Richard Doty, and Richard Doty had gone on somebody's Facebook, I think it was Isaac Coy in the UK, and said in his Facebook communication with Isaac Coy about 3 weeks ago that he, Richard Doty, working in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations for the United States in 1984, had seen 150 pages from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations about the phenomena in Rendlesham Forest, where John Burroughs twice, on December 26, 1980 and December 28, 1980, was engulfed in light. And that's why John got in touch with him. And we're going to explore what Richard Doty says that he read with his own eyes and knows from that 150-page AFOSI report about Rendlesham Forest, that maybe there's information that we don't know. Now, my last discussion was when I was trying to work and get that HBO special to go forward, and he is the one at Kirtland Air Force Base on April 9th, 1983, who showed me the alleged briefing paper for the President of the United States on the subject of unidentified aerial vehicles, also described as unidentified aerial craft in this paper. In my book, an alien harvest. I go into the whole saga of how it went from Doty showing me this paper, my being told that there would be film that could be released for my HBO special from a meeting between extraterrestrials and our government at Holloman Air Force Base on April 25th, 1964. And that part of the story that I would be allowed to tell would be that Lonnie Zamora, the police officer from Socorro, when he was in his police car near 6 o'clock in the evening on April 24th, 1964, that he saw an egg-shaped vehicle with a symbol on this side, like in an oval position this way, on what appeared to be struts. And Lonnie Zamora got out of his car, and when he did, he said what looked like two little children in snowsuits ran into this egg-like thing. And then what he thought was flame, we don't know for sure. It did leave carbon residue, but flame came out of it. It took off. And that the part I was going to be able to tell in my HBO special was that this was a mistake in Project Sigma, that we had been trying to communicate with what are called the Ebens. There had been some mathematical discrepancy, and that it placed the latitude longitude at 6 p.m. in Socorro for the Ebens. That was their interpretation, but what the United States wanted was 6 a.m. on April 25th, 1964 at the Trinity site, or further south toward Holloman. There's confusion in various points of view on that. And that the whole Lonnie Zamora impact, or if you his encounter, occurred because of a mistake, a communication mistake. Now, with all of that, that's why being able to be at Kirtland in a meeting that had been organized by Peter Gersten for Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, for me to get a completely different kind of information, and then being handed this briefing paper, and then later being told that I would be able to have some footage and be able to tell this story in my HBO special, and then having nothing communicated to HBO at my request. That was why that HBO special didn't go forward. And Richard Doty seemed to be an intermediary functionary at the beginning about this document that I was shown, but other people called me, not him, and that it was a process that went on for about 3 or 4 months, where I was trying to see if I could get a breakthrough on documents and confirmation that would satisfy home box office that this was for real and that they would be willing to continue with the project. But the executives there were afraid of taking on the U.S. government without, as I was told, Linda, if you can bring us a confirmation from the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretary of State, will go forward with the home box office project. So in a kind of trying to bring this down in a short explanation of a very long and complex process that I was in 1983, that was how I came to meet and talk with Richard Doty, who handed me that briefing paper. And then the whole rest of the decade of the 80s to the 90s to 2000s to now, in November of 2017, the issue that is before us that is more important is RAF Bentwaters, and the ability for John and me to ask Richard Doty, who has suddenly surfaced to Philip Coy, saying that he had seen 150 pages in the AFSI that were classified about RAF Bentwaters, is why we're going to talk about this subject next week on November 16th for Phenomena Radio on KGRA. And this week, on this Thursday, it's going to be UFOs, possibly aliens in Antarctica. So back to back, I hope everybody who is here tonight will come and tune in to KGRA this week and next week. So we'll see what Richard Doty has to say on RAF Bentwaters. Yes. A lot of people ask me, why am I still alive? And have I been threatened? And there was a period of time around 1986 to 85, 86, especially right there, that a whole lot of very weird and seriously, potentially threatening things happened to me. And I came to the conclusion that if I whined, if I, as a reporter, went public saying I think that the government is trying to do me in, that it would be the worst possible thing to do, because I think that the government, one of its tactics is to try to bring some kind of, we'll call fear, that's kind of a harassing fear, to people who have been trying to investigate, let's say, aliens, animal mutilations, human abductions, all these subjects that I have been trying to understand since 1979, doing the documentary A Strange Harvest. And that on certain subjects, they think certain people become more threatening to their policies of denial than other people. And at those times, you get more harassed. And that happened to me during that period of time. But I kind of think that because I didn't whine, that a policy was changed, or maybe my work shifted and they decided, leave her alone. It has been a very, very difficult path. I will say that. If I looked at the last 38 years of trying to understand what the facts and the truth are about who are we, humans, on a planet that seems to provide perhaps metals, genetics, products that we can't even comprehend from our planet, to a wide variety of different kinds of alien life forms. And as whistleblowers say, you have to think of the timeline in millions of years, and Homo sapiens sapien has only been around on Earth, starting with Homo erectus, for 2 million years. Therefore, we're the babies on the planet. We're the new ones. And whatever we're dealing with appears to have a very long-term vested interest in something that is, I'm going to say, mined or harvested from Earth, and that it isn't just one, that there are multiple self-interests of other things out there to which planet Earth provides something that they need. And that in those provisions, what makes this even more complicated, more difficult, potentially threatening, is that over and over again, whether it's stated straightforwardly or you have to read the implications in between the lines, those people who have been whistleblowers through the years have left me with a distinct impression that there are battles. There are a lot of cosmic battles, and that we could have at any given time 2 or 3 different intelligences with different agendas that are in conflict with themselves. And for us humans to understand that and what the implications are, even to our current geopolitical problems on Earth now. What is behind ISIS really? What is behind Syria? What is behind the battles? Was World War II an extraterrestrial war being fought through human bodies as at least 2 whistleblowers have told me over the past few years. That's what keeps me going. That's what I have been trying to understand. And today, I hope that the government of the United States and all of its different complex facets sees that my work and others help, that we're trying to interface as honestly, I am trying to interface as honestly as I possibly can about the single most difficult and complex subject that I know, the interaction of multiple alien intelligences with and on our planet. I thank you all for being here for another Earthfiles YouTube news update, and I'm going to try to keep doing this now on Wednesday nights, and Thursdays will be Phenomenon and Once a Month Coast, and that I look forward to your feedback, and that I hope a bunch will tune in tomorrow for what I know will be a fascinating discussion with the retired naval flight engineer that I call Brian S. See you guys tomorrow.